when you aren't able to ask for what you need, or if you're not able to say, like, I know what I said my ideal was, but this is actually what I have. Like, that's honesty. That's transparency. That's really what you need in a relationship to make it work. And so it's so important to be able to voice that.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Hi there. Welcome to Ask Us Anything, where we answer community questions and spend a couple of minutes, maybe half an hour to 45 minutes with our wonderful...
Maybe a little longer today. We got a doozy.
You got good questions today. Anyway, I'm Meshai, and I'm here with the lovely Fin, and we're going to give you all of our wisdom / just like things we've collected over the years from Knocks and Bruises and see where we end up.
Yeah. Well, Happy New Year from my side. Happy New Year, Meshai. It's good to see you.
Happy New Year. Oh my gosh. I can't believe we're in 2025. Isn't this like the year that they mentioned in like Back to the Future or something? I don't know. I just feel like we're all living in Back to the Future's eventuality of what would happen. I'm happy about it though.
Yeah. I don't know. I will be honest. I own the Back to the Future trilogy on DVD.
That's awesome.
Blu-ray, but I haven't watched it in a long time, so I can't remember the exact year. But I have a feeling this year it's going to get better. It started off a little clunky, but I think it's gonna get better.
We all have like reasonable, moderate expectations for 2025, but I think that's good.
I'm putting my hopes high. I'm setting them high. I'm going to be an optimist. That's my thing this year. I'm going to be an optimist.
Okay. I like it. Maybe you can share some of it with me. I'll be up for it.
I'm here to do it for the next hour or so.
Awesome. Okay. Then tell everybody what makes you super amazingly qualified to rattle off life advice and understandings.
Well, maybe it's mostly that I have opinions and that I feel somewhat comfortable sharing some of those opinions on the internet. So I think what I would say is I've been non-monogamous for the last 15 to 18 years, depending on when you started the timer, been in various ways of being open, from swinging in the early days to polyamory to sort of just an open mindset, and also have interviewed hundreds of people. I've gone through a sex and relationship coaching program. And so I don't believe that anything I'm putting out there is the right way, but it's just sort of things I've picked up, opinions I have, and people ask for them. So I give them sometimes. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. I will go next. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I have certifications in sex therapy and then another one in trauma therapy. I have been walking my own E&M journey for about 6 years now. It's crazy that it's been 6 years, but yeah. And I've had a couple of different relationship dynamics and structures. I've learned some things from falling upwards is what I like to call it. And I stole that from Richard Rohr. Don't come for me. Also, I am a coach with Expansive Connection. And so I've been working with them for about 6 years as well. So this has just been an awesome journey where I get to connect and also learn from the community around me.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm always excited when we get to chat. And I think the thing we love to say up front here is these are our opinions. We have experience, but also take what you think feels good for you and leave the rest. I think that's a good thing to do in life in general, because there's a lot of people out there with a lot of opinions, and it's good to figure out which ones are for you and which ones aren't.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So we're going to give you some of ours, and we hope you enjoy them. Actually, the first one we've got today was not even a question. It came from within our community. So if you're not familiar with our community, Emma and I, the person who I normally host this with, we have a community of over 300 people. We use an app called Mighty Networks, and it's sort of a support community for people who are non-monogamous. And you're in there, Meshai, as well.
I am.
Yeah. So this one came from within there. So thank you to our community member who sent this in. And again, not exactly a question, but she says, I just wish you would talk more about ... And so I thought of some things, and because I want to get your take on the topic. And this one is on polyamorous breakups. Unless it's a completely toxic relationship, I'm finding it hard to understand the point of breaking up. It's not like we have to cut ties to make room for someone else. Yet I still see posts in my various non-monogamous communities about people breaking up for very monogamous reasons, or monogamous sounding reasons, like we just have different goals or we just want different things. And if polyamory has taught me anything, it's that I no longer have to worry about, for example, dating a complete slob because I never have to go to their home. Again,
Mhm.
maybe you love living in slob environments. No shame. Uh, but I don't have to escalator up. So that's in quotes, escalator up, meaning get on the relationship
Mhm.
escalator to living together, and or I can escalator up and down any which way suits us. So why do people break up?
That's a good question. I've often thought of that as well until I started answering my own question within my own relationships around that. So I don't know. I think it's kind of the same thing as like with monogamous structures as well. There's some people who it's easier to like go back down the relationship escalator to friendships or something, or like because we are non-monogamous, it can be something in the middle. However, there are some people where it's just like we actually I don't think we could be friends. And it's because our relationship is so in depth and passionate, and there's so much water underneath the bridge. And if you left me in a dark room with you, we'd be dating again. Like that's it'd be
Yep.
that
Yep.
horrible cycle, right? And so it's better for both of us to like go our separate ways. Or if I mean, I'm not perfect, so there are definitely people where I'm like, if I hear that you are dating someone else, I still have such like a lot of emotions for you that I don't know that I can be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so happy for you. Please keep going." I'm going to be like, "Well, dang it. I wanted to be that person and it just didn't work out." And so if I can't do that for you, I probably need to like pause just to make sure that we're both happy. I don't want that energy for you. I don't want to give it off. I don't want you to be like, what is this weirdness? And so maybe like a year down the road, I can circle back around and be like, hey, let's be friends. But for a while, I might need a little bit of space. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my idea of breaking up. What's yours? Mm.
Well, I'm curious on this before I share my thoughts. And disclaimer here for anybody listening, we decided we weren't going to share notes about this one.
We don't
We
know
we
what it
we
is.
we came in blind to see what each other thought about it. So, but I'm curious. So it sounds like your side is more thinking about it from different relationships might yield different outcomes, right? If it was super
Yeah.
intense, you might be in a place where you're like, hey, I don't think it's smart to see you for 6 months or a year because I need some time to transition in my own self.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I want friendship to be there.
Sometimes like
Yeah.
that relationship where it's heavy and passionate and you're trying to figure out how this works, like the de-escalation of that is too hard to do with that person that you still have all these muddied feelings with.
Right.
You sometimes just need like a little bit of breathing room to like go, I need to shift the way that I see that person. I need to shift the way that I feel like this person fits into my life, and I cannot do that if you're still here. I need you to be gone for a little bit.
Right. Well, and I think it may be at the core of that too, because there was a statement in here about it's not like we have to cut ties to make room for somebody else,
Mm.
and I think in some ways I agree with that, but in others I think we maybe don't have to cut ties, but I think sometimes we do have to shift what we're doing, right? Because maybe it's not even because of another person. Maybe you got a new job and now all of a sudden you're working 15-hour days.
Yeah.
So you, in some ways, you do have to make room for not necessarily somebody else, but something else, right?
Mhm.
We can add the saying, right, is, love is infinite, but time is not. And
That's right.
so how are we going to use our time? And it sounds like this a little bit of what you're talking about here is when we decided that the relationship, something needed to change for some reason, maybe quote unquote breaking up is the thing that gives us both that space to feel best, but maybe not, right? Maybe it's a more of a casual thing, or maybe you're somebody who can just de-escalate a super
Mhm.
intense romantic passionate partnership to friendship.
Yeah.
That might be you.
Mhm. And it might also be easier to go from romantic partnership to friendship if it only got to a certain extent of relationship
Mhm.
intertwining.
Yeah.
This might, like, maybe you guys have only been dating for whatever time, because people move differently emotionally, but whatever time feels comfortable before it was like, oh, I've started to get really attached to this person. Like, if you haven't gotten to that part, it might be easier to shift back into friendship mode, a little easier. Um, and then I've also had experiences where I've had partners where we did de-escalate it. I took some time, and like 2 or 3 months later, we were friends, and that was fine. Then there's other people that I did not do that with, and I'm like, I'm not quite sure that we would be able to do that. We would probably still need a little bit more time, and I'm okay with that. And, you know, I love the fact that in E&M you can make relationships different, and they don't all have to be like either your romantic partner or you are not,
Yep.
and it gets to be something, some gradient in the middle. And so if you're both in that kind of understanding of that, that it can be that gradient, time isn't necessarily the thing that's going to change how you want to connect with that person. The time is just for healing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so you'd asked me a minute ago what I think about it, and I kind of zoomed way out on this, and I was thinking about this morning before I got up, and I was just the note I wrote is, I think breaking up is a label just like anything else we need to talk about. And so I feel like I've sort of boiled it down. Sometimes this is how my brain works, like all the way to the basics. And I think we often talk about, well, are we partners or are we dating? Or what does it look like on the quote unquote escalation side?
Mhm.
But I don't, I was thinking about, I'm like, well, why is it any different on the other side of it? I think
Yeah.
to me, a lot of this is labels for me. And we say this often on the show, but labels are really just a starting point for a conversation about what we're doing. And I think for me, it's just about setting expectations around time, energy, and everything that we're planning to do, and understanding that our what we set as an expectation can change,
Mhm.
and it's going to change, and we're going to feel different things. But if we can come in and say, back to their example, hey, person, you probably don't want to call them a slob to their face, but this person is not somebody that I want to live with, but I'd love to have you come over once a week and we'll watch movies, eat popcorn, and fool around.
Mhm.
And that's to me what our relationship is. And if at some point that needs to change, then we talk about changing that, right? Well, hey, I would love to live together now. Do you want to move in with me? Or, this isn't really working anymore. Can we shift it to look like this? Can we keep the popcorn and movies, and I'm not really feeling the hooking up anymore? And so is that a breaking up? Do you have to break up? And maybe that person's like, well, hey, if I'm not going to have the hooking up, I don't want the popcorn and movies, so I would like to initiate a breakup, and that's what we're labeling us not hanging out anymore. So I don't know. I got like kind of in the weeds with it, but for me, it's a label on what we're doing
Mhm.
and how we're seeing each other. And some people might call it breaking up, and some people might call it a de-escalation or
Yeah.
a friendship. Because I think, yeah, moving from an intense romantic partnership to a friendship, could you say, well, we didn't break up, this is just what we're doing now? But some people might feel like they got broken up with, because that's
Mhm. Mhm.
that's what we've ascribed to that label. So I don't know. I just went a little bit esoteric on this about
I like it.
just what is it? Well, it's
Yeah.
just a label of what we're doing, and we get to describe that just like we do any label that we're doing.
And I don't think I've actually thought about the breaking up as a label. I think to me, it's always been like oh, this is the thing that happened, or, it signifies that there was a complete like split in the relationship instead of like a label. And then we get to decide what that label actually means. I really like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think they talked a bit about the escalator here, and I just had a note that just says be not being on the relationship escalator. And I guess if you're not familiar with that term, so broadly, the relationship escalator is we meet, we start dating, we get a little more serious, we probably move in together, have a kid, buy a house, and retire together. It's the increasing responsibilities and interdependent or not codependency, but the interconnectedness
Yeah.
enmeshment between people.
Mm-hmm.
And that, one thing leads to the other and it's continually like growing.
Yeah. And there's also societal pressure around that. And people will ask you the questions around it. So it's not like necessarily something that you were actively even trying to do.
Yeah.
It's more of like the current.
Yeah.
So you have to actively swim against it. It's kind of the default mode. Yeah.
Which is, exactly what I wrote was it takes communicate, like not being on the escalator it's can be a lot more work. Cause like you said, there's people trying to push you up the escalator.
Yes.
And then there's all the stuff that we've learned for so long that's pulling us up it. And so, it takes a lot of communication and intentionality, I think, to set sort of an expectation with somebody and say, this is what we're doing. And we agree that if it starts to change for either one of us, that we talk about it. Wait, instead of waiting until you're like so far apart that one or both of you is feeling really awful in the connection because there was sort of a void of communication around it.
Yeah.
Anyway, relationships are easy. So that was my thoughts on it. But I also think, as we said a few minutes ago, there is a limited amount of time, and you might get to a place with somebody where, hey, this was great and fun, but I don't have as much as I used to, or something's come up, and maybe saying, well, we're gonna break up, and this is our new dynamic. If that's the way you need to say it, why not?
Yeah. I mean, also there's like, people talked a little bit about being polysaturated, where you made all these great connections with lots of people and you realize that you have to be intentional. You need time because I think, you also have to make sure that you have time in your relationships for yourself. Like your relationship with yourself is super important. And so if you wake up one day and you're like, I have too many people I'm invested in, the breakup might not even be because I don't like you or something didn't go well or our goals are different. It might just be like, I've had to make a really difficult decision about the amount of relationships and people I can invest in, and I cannot continue to invest in this in the way that I know nurtures you or makes you happy or balances things out. And I want to, but I feel like I'm just going to continue to disappoint you and I'll be disappointed myself. So can we move the relationship to something different, but I still want you a part of my world,
Right.
And so would you call that a breakup? I don't think so. It's more of like, I want to take care of you, but I also have to take care of myself. Can we move this into a different label or understanding or gradient, so that we can still both be a part of each other's lives?
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool too.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you could have, like you said, you could have that conversation of, well, hey, I still love you deeply and I want all of the things that I've always wanted, but I only have one night a month. Does that work for you? Well, no, that feels like shit. If I'm going to be in a partnership, I need more than one night a month.
Yeah.
Okay. Then maybe we need to quote unquote break up because that's not going to feel good to you. And it's not going to feel good to, like, I can't give more than that and you want and need more than that. So we're not aligned here. What do we do with the misalignment? Yeah.
I agree.
All right. The next one. All right. So we're going from breaking up to NRE.
Yes.
We're making a hard left. All right. So this question, it was an audio question, but we didn't get explicit permission to play it. So I'm gonna sort of read a very, very close summarized version of it. I have a question about NRE. I opened my relationship back in 2020. I'm still doing research and trying to build a community, and my partner found themselves another partner about a year ago. They're in a long distance relationship and have been seeing each other for about a week every 4 months or so. I feel like the relationship between me and my partner is dwindling. A lot of balls have been dropped and there's a lot of miscommunications and we're arguing more and more. I'm not sure how long I can feel like this. I know NRE can last up to 2 years and it's only been a year. I don't know what to do. I'm not feeling like a priority anymore and I don't feel like the effort is there. If you have any advice, I'd be very grateful. I don't feel like I know anyone where their partner is partnered, but they are not, and I feel like maybe I'm overreacting. All right, Meshai.
Let me just wave this magic wand real quick.
Yeah, this is Yeah.
This one's a hard one. This one's like, because it's not that you don't love your partner, and it's not that you don't want to show up, and it's not that you're not even happy for them. It's just like, this is so different. And I also am watching you blossom and have fun and enjoy this. And I don't know that I'm there yet. She's not even saying that she wants to be there. Um, so this one's got a lot of levels, which I like, by the way.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think what I wanted to start too is just for anybody who doesn't know what NRE is, we'll start there with a quick
Yes.
broad definition. And again, feel free to go dig into this as much as you want. But NRE stands for new relationship energy and is typically the sort of expressed as the flood of chemicals and excitement that comes in when you're forming a new connection with somebody and you're like, super excited, and basically everything in your life can fall away because you're hyper focused on this new exciting thing, and it's a lot. I think we've said on the show before, it's one of the most powerful legal drugs you can get, and
Yes.
it can be really intense. So I think just defining it to me was important.
Important.
But I think I also wanted to share a few additional thoughts about NRE, and
Yeah.
I'd love some of yours as well on this. Which, NRE isn't like a fixed thing. It's not something that like comes in the mail and then you just use it up and it goes away. For some people, it they don't even experience it at all, and
Mhm.
some people it can last years and years and years, or months, or so to think that you're on a 2-year window of, well, when we hit the 2-year mark, everything's going to go back to the way it was because their NRE is going to come, quote unquote, come down, and we'll find our rhythm again. I'm not saying that couldn't happen, but I think if that's the way you're looking at it, it could be really tough. Because I
Yeah.
also, in long distance relationships, and this is a thing I know I experienced, when you're seeing somebody less frequently, that NRE can really drag out longer and longer and longer because you're not really finding I think sometimes the things that sort of help NRE wear off is you're living together and you're sick
It's
of picking
reality.
up, reality sets in. You're picking up their laundry, they're leaving their dirty dishes around, and you're like, what? This person that was like a fantasy figure
Mhm.
is also a human that
Mhm.
does human shit, and so, but when you're in a long distance relationship, you're kind of living in vacation mode, or you can
Yes.
live a little bit in vacation mode, which can keep that going. So I those were a few of my initial thoughts on it. I'm curious if you have anything else, Miche.
I like to think of NRE as a beautiful bowl in a china shop. And that sometimes if, you know, especially if you haven't experienced it before, and if this is your first time opening up in
Mm-hmm.
a relationship after you've been together for a very long time, that bowl is gorgeous and it just like breaks a lot of stuff before you can get it out the door. And it's not intentional most of the times. Most times people aren't actually trying to be bulls in china shops. It's just that flood of happy chemicals kind of gives you that feeling of like, it's not that nothing else matters, but this is just intensely beautiful. And even if you try to mute it, you know, it's obsessive and it's a drug because your brain, like if that person left, your brain would be like, whatever needs to happen for us to get those chemicals back,
Yeah.
let's do it. And so, there's a lot of growth and learning that often comes from having NRE kind of let loose in your china shop. Um, and hopefully some of those things are learning to ask for what you need and learning um, to be able to put yourself in your partner's shoes a lot of times. So NRE is great. I particularly love this blend of cocktails that happens in your brain. Like I have ADD, so every time it comes around, I'm just like, that's what energy feels like. That's great.
Yeah.
So
Checking your phone every 3 minutes.
yeah,
Did I get a text? Did I get a text? Did I get a text? Yeah.
it's great.
And then you get a text and you're like, woo, I got a text. Oh my God, I got to respond. Oh my God, I got to respond. And like, I don't need to do that work.
Work? What?
Laundry. No, I'm
Yeah.
not doing laundry.
Not doing that either. Oh my gosh, the laundry. So it's a great experience. It's a wonderful thing to have, but it can sometimes make you think about things that would normally be no brainers for you very differently.
Hmm.
And so it's just something to celebrate, but also be cautious about.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And similar, I wrote down that the NRE isn't an excuse to neglect our lives or our other partnerships. And I'm not saying that he's doing this or that he's using this as like we've heard this from people, right? Well, yeah, okay, I missed this, but I'm an NRE right now. What do you expect, right? And I think that can be, I didn't do the laundry, I didn't cook for I haven't eaten a home cooked meal in 3 weeks because I've just been like binging the NRE.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying don't do that, but I think for myself, there's the moment of stopping and going, okay, that's what I'm doing. Do I want to keep doing that, or do I need to adjust in my life?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you just want to ride the ride and
Yeah.
and do the NRE drugs, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But maybe it's being a little bit aware of it, that's
Uh-huh.
what's happening, and opting in a
Yes.
little more.
And like knowing that once the high wears off, you still really want all the other relationships around you to be just as healthy and just as good. Like you
Yeah,
don't want to go off on this journey and come back and I've burned my whole village. I make
yeah,
sure it's still there.
yeah, yeah. Which I think brings us maybe into a little bit more about their situation. And I wanted to say too, to validate and also celebrate this person for like going slow, doing the research and building community on the front end. That's not to say that the way that their partner is doing this is wrong. And we were talking off camera that it feels a little bit like they decided, hey, we're going to open our partnership, and one of them went to the library and got all the books and started digging in, and the other one was like, got a partner, and just sort of like showed up with it. And I don't want to like shame either side of this. I think they're
Yeah.
both completely valid. But if you have two people or more opening a partnership, getting clear on the front end about how are we going to do that
Hmm.
as much as you can, I think is really helpful. And I know the ship has sort of sailed on that one, so I'm not trying to be like, well, you messed it up, you can't recover. But just a bit of advice, like looking ahead, if you can get on the same page with your partner about at least what you think
Hmm.
this is going to look like and how you kind of want to approach it, while knowing that it's probably going to change, right? When you get into it, it's not going to be exactly what you thought.
I
But
think
can we,
that's so big though. The
yeah,
fact that like knowing ahead of time that even if you say yes to this certain plan, once you get in it, it will probably change. I think
right.
that is huge because you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think this is a great example of we didn't know what the NRE was going to do to us. We've
Mhm.
never experienced it, and so you couldn't predict. You can't sit down and be like, okay, well, week 3, NRE is going to peak, and you're going to do. You don't know, right? You have no idea what's going to happen, and
Yeah.
so I think you can talk about some of this stuff, and you can try to lay out a plan, and then it's about checking in, communicating. Where are you at? How are you feeling? How am I feeling? What are we needing? What is our sort of relationship ethos here?
Mhm.
Are we
Mhm.
doing this quote unquote together, where we want to really sort of make sure we're putting our partnership at the center of this adventure? Or is this, you go do you, I'm going to go do me, and I hope we'll see where we cross, because we've talked to people who've done both.
Mhm. 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 Yeah, I think that's really good. Just being able to like say, just even if you pause for a little bit and ask each other, like, what do we want our pace to be? And if your pace is faster than mine, which is fine, when do I say, hey, I think maybe you're moving too slow, or hey, I think you're moving a little too fast for me, and like renegotiate what that looks like so that you guys don't create distance. And then
Hmm.
in that distance, you create resentment or just feel like, I don't think this person was actually like, you'll make your own story, you'll make your own narrative about what's happening. So I think it's really important to be able to say, like, what pace do we want? Even if it's not the same one. And then how do we like raise our hand and say, hey, can we have a meeting? You're going too fast. Or hey, can we have a meeting? I feel like you're going really, really slow.
Yeah. Or maybe I can't keep up.
Mhm.
So I want to keep up. I want to do this with you, but I can't keep up right
Yeah.
now. What
Yeah.
what can we do? What are we able to do here? So in this one, I know we're talking a little bit about what would be great, but in this case, the bus has sort of already left the station.
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
so where, I guess, your thoughts, or maybe they've asked for advice. What is some of your advice for the bus left the station
The bus
and
left the station.
it is,
And they're gone. It's
it,
tallied on. He has a whole person.
yeah.
I think, well, one, being able to chat a little bit about the fact that you kind of feel like that you're kind of not being attended to well.
Mm.
To be able to say, I would really love it if we could just pause for a minute and maybe rediscuss our agreements. Maybe I thought I could do this and I feel like I'm white knuckling it to be able to accommodate this. So I'm realizing that for me right now, I feel as though our relationship is actually pulling us away from each other instead of helping to pull us back to each other. Like, I'm also kind of curious about, what does your repair look like when they come back from that trip? What does the um the prep time look like before they go, so that you feel connected and they're gone for the week? And then when they come back, what does that repair reconnection time look like between the two of you to help solidify the relationship that you all have and to nurture it, so that the narrative is a mutual narrative, not an individual one with
Mhm.
distance in it. And then, like, I don't know if you feel FOMO, but I definitely am a victim of FOMO. It's a thing. And if you're feeling as though I'm missing out on something, or maybe they're having more, like, this also kind of goes back into the narrative. Maybe they're having more fun, or maybe they don't miss me, and I'm the only person with a partner. Am I not doing something fast enough or doing this well enough? Just being able to voice that is what's happening, if that's happening during that week, is really important. I also thought it would be really good to make sure that you are investing in the friendships in your life, and that you're building a life worth living just for yourself, so that it's fully engaged in during the week that he's gone. And then to not be afraid to ask for what you need. Ask for different things. Just because you guys stated it one way a couple months ago, a year ago, doesn't mean that, oh, I've experimented. I've tried this. I've tried these different things. This is what I'm finding works for me and doesn't work for me. Can we sit down with this now? And then invite them into where you are now, because the relationship doesn't look the same as it did probably when you originally made these agreements. And it's okay to say, hey, this is a living document. What
Mhm.
do we want to talk about? What do we want to fix? What do we want to negotiate now?
I love that. I think one thing in there that is really important is I can ask for anything.
Mhm.
And I would even go a step further and say we should ask for what we need, and bring that up, because, right, if this is, I'm just white knuckling it for hoping that in 2 years it gets better, and there's things that I'm needing, uh, I that's a hard ride to ride. 2 years of feeling like you're not getting you're not a priority, you're not getting your needs met in a partnership. That's not, there isn't this, okay, we're doing non-monogamy, I just have to be okay with it. Right.
Mhm.
They're
Mhm.
in, this is, I think, what we were kind of getting at the beginning is, well, they're an NRE. This is what non-monogamy and polyamory is. I'm just not able to do it. So I have to hold on tight and bear it, because this is a more evolved way of being in relationships. And there's like so many of these tropes and things that go on and I think in the non-monogamous sphere out here, that this is the way. And if you want to do non-monogamy, you
Mhm.
would just feel compersion and happiness and no jealousy and no FOMO.
Yeah.
And no, it doesn't matter how intense the feelings are or whatever. And it's just, I think a lot of that is so much bullshit. I think this is hard. You're
Mhm.
going to feel things, and if you're feeling things, it's really important to share them
Yeah.
with your partners.
And also, sometimes your partners don't realize that you've been white knuckling it that hard, or they think that maybe it's difficult, but you want to process through this, or you want to sit with it. And it's okay to say, like, I'm tapping out.
Hmm.
um, and I've had clients before where they've said, these are my ideals for non-monogamy. This is where I'd like to be, but emotionally, it's on a different stratosphere of what I'm able to do or provide right now. And instead of white knuckling it to your ideal, like, be honest about where you're at right now, because um, most partners don't want you living in that kind of pain or distress. And the purpose of being partnered, for the most part, is to share joy together, to, be comfort and the source of understanding and love and validation for that person. And if that's not existing, or if this relationship dynamic is chipping away at that, that's a pretty big deal. That means the roots of your relationship are starting to disintegrate. And I'm not saying that's where you all are. I'm just saying that when you aren't able to ask for what you need, or if you're not able to say, like, I know what I said my ideal was, but this is actually what I have, like, that's honesty, that's transparency. That's really what you need in a relationship to make it work. And so it's so important to be able to voice that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, Meshai. And we were talking a little before we hit record on this one, and the sort of the analogy or the metaphor for this that popped into my head was that, if your relationship ideals are mapping it over to something else, would be, I believe skydiving is
Mm-hmm.
the ultimate. Yet I get lightheaded and dizzy every time I go up a ladder because I'm afraid of heights. That's not to say your vision of wanting to skydive is bad, but also understanding that where you are today, skydiving is going to be really fucking hard. It's not to say you couldn't, quote unquote, do the work to go up in the plane and jump out of it, but is that where you're at?
Yeah.
Is that what you want to do? And to then think about doing that for a week every 4 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps
Mm-hmm.
if that's sort of your skydiving,
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of that's a lot.
Yeah.
And so thinking about how do we take care of ourselves, maybe to work towards that, if that's what we want to work towards. And I also don't think that we have to work towards a certain point other than, taking care of ourselves and taking care of the people that we're in partnership or relationship with, whether they're romantic or just, friendships or familial. There's no right way to do it. I think that comes down to what are we needing here, in our partnerships.
Yeah. And the time might not be like a big thing for you, but it might also be. And I know that, like, I think a lot of people in E&M have recognized that, like, even if they wanted to go back to monogamy, which some people do, you can't unknow what you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a certain amount of this toothpaste you can't put back in the tube. However, you are allowed to make your E&M relationship as expansive or contractive as you want, right? Like, there's no, like, once I've reached here, that's where we stay or we get bigger. You can contract it because, you change, your partner change, your wants and needs change. That exists in monogamy, that exists in ethical non-monogamy. It's just the part of being human.
Yeah.
So please do not be afraid to say, like, I might need something smaller, and that smaller might be like less time, or like, can that person come here for a little bit, so that you're still with me, but also, like, mostly maybe looking at, paying attention to them, but I need that person here. Might look like smaller chunks of time over, maybe 2 to 3 months instead of one long one over 4 months. And so just playing with it, because you're also trying to figure out what feels good to you.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to just highlight quickly is, like, defining what it means to be a priority to you.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can sometimes go on a default mode, especially if we are our partner's only person that they see, that everything therefore is a priority because it's all directed one way. And when it's directed two ways, it's really important to be able to say, this is what makes me feel special. This is what makes me feel like I'm a priority for you. But if your partner doesn't know that, they might be thinking that they're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. Right. Especially if what makes them feel like a priority isn't the same as what makes you feel like a priority. And they're doing all the things that would make them feel like a priority, right? Well, I spend, 11 out of the 12 weeks or 15 out of the 16 weeks with you. Of course you're my priority. I would feel like a priority, but right, if that's not how you're feeling, then that's where we have to talk about it. And, and I think we keep saying, well, you should ask for what you want. And I think that's really important, but it's also important to know that you might ask for something that your partner can't do. And that is also a reality. And it sounds, I don't want to maybe bring it full circle here, but it sounds like maybe that's a little bit of where this person has landed is their partner asked for, I want to go and spend a week with my partner every 4 months, and got that.
Mm-hmm.
But you're learning now that maybe that's not a thing you can do. And now we have to figure out, how do we adjust that? And that's a really hard thing, because there's somebody else involved who
Yes.
is now expecting
Yes.
a week every 4 months.
Mhm.
And so I think the one of the many hard parts about non-monogamy is, if we're going to have multiple partnerships, then it's really on us. I think it's on me to figure out, how do I have multiple partnerships that fit into my life, that I can give those people the things that I've told them I can give them.
Yes.
And so I think there is this part that I'm sorry, your partner's probably going to have some hard conversations with their other partner, with you,
Mhm. Mhm.
and the best you can do, I think, is show up with your own feelings and expressing what you want and need, and what you can and can't do, and then being able to have some honest conversations about, well, what does this mean for us?
Mhm. Mhm.
Do we need to change something about what we're doing? Are there ways we can shift this, that we both get what we are needing? But trying to white knuckle it is a really tough way to go.
Yeah, I don't recommend. That does
Yeah.
not sound like fun, nor does it sound like, mm, it just sounds like a place where your resentment weeds start to grow quite wild, and that you create a wall that you didn't even intentionally wanna put up in the first place, and, you know, that narrative will eat you alive
Hmm.
because you're getting a it as time goes on, if something doesn't change, you're getting evidence to add to the narrative that you have in your head, right? Oh, this person's still spending time or not making me a priority. Well, then my narrative is correct,
Yeah.
which technically it is, until you all have that conversation and try to figure out, like, how do we shift things and manage things so that we're both getting as much of what we want as possible, and so that I also feel like that priority again.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think we've covered
Mhm.
most of the bullet points I had, and I will just maybe acknowledge that we were a little all over the place here. We were both kind of like, I don't know. I felt like myself, you would share something and be like, oh my gosh, I have a thought, and it wasn't completely on point. But I hope that this was at least somewhat helpful for people. But
Mhm.
I had two things that I didn't really know where to stick them into our conversation here, and one of them is just around when we share, we keep saying, okay, well, it's important to share what you're needing, and talk about how you're feeling. I think there was a statement in here that I thought was a really good example of how to share your feelings from your perspective versus sort of projecting to like what the other person is doing. And they had said, I don't feel like a priority anymore, and I don't feel like the effort is there. And I
Mhm.
think this one, the first half of that to me was like, the thing that I think is really important to share is, this is how I'm feeling. I don't feel like a priority anymore. The second part is ascribing to them something. So I don't feel like the effort is there.
Mhm.
I know if that were me hearing that, I would get defensive.
Mhm.
It would be hard to not get defensive, because
Yeah.
you're now assuming that I'm not putting in effort,
Yeah.
and I might be putting in tons and tons of effort, and I know that you don't feel it or see it. But so that was just the part for me that I would just maybe think about, how you can frame this in
Mhm.
terms of, I'm feeling this feeling
Mhm.
versus, I don't feel like you're doing X, Y, or
Mm.
Z.
I like that a lot, 'cause, like, they'd probably be like, "Effort? Let me bullet point for you all the effort that I've been doing," and you're but if it's not effort to you, if it doesn't
Yep.
translate as effort to you, they're spinning their wheels for nothing. So, it's important to be able to talk about that, because, like, if I'm like, "I could see you every day, but that won't make me happy." What makes me happy is, like, that you plan something that we do, because to me, that means you put intention into it and you actually thought about me and what I wanted. Those are 2 different things to me.
Yep.
And one feels like effort, and one just feels like we're surviving, capitalism together.
Mhm. Yep.
You know? So, so being able to talk about what that effort looks like, because your partner might actually think that they're doing all of the things. So I love the way that you said about phrasing it so that it's about what I'm experiencing, not necessarily about what you're doing. I love that.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. And I think the other one is and probably builds on what we talked about again around the sort of, this is the way I'm supposed to do it, and it's just a white knuckle ride, is I think in the non-monogamy world, there can sometimes creep in a mindset that if you're not quote unquote doing the work or finding all the self growth, that you're
Mm.
somehow not doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people realize once they start going down this path that there are things that they've maybe never felt before or never had to face before.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there's a sort of a determination that we all get to make of, do I want to? And do I not want to? And I think it can be really easy for it to feel like, well, this is just the way it's supposed to be. I'm not evolved enough. I haven't done enough work. And so it's really on me to figure out how to manage myself so I can tolerate you going away or you doing whatever you want to do. And I think I just want to really put it out there that it's really up to each of us how much of the quote unquote work we want to do and how much we can do, right? What I have capacity for on any given week in terms of being able to do the work changes. One week I might be like, yeah, I'm ready to, I can sit at home and sit in some really hard feelings while my partner's out on a date. And another week it's like, no, I don't have that. I can't do that this week. Or so I think we have to be okay. So I just think it's important to recognize that the path to growth isn't just stress the system.
Mm-hmm.
You have to
Mm-hmm.
stress the system, and then you have to give the system, your nervous system, your whole
Mm-hmm.
body system
Mm-hmm.
time to recover and come back to safety, and then test it a little bit more and come back. I think if that's what you want to do, but I don't. I caution anybody who thinks that they have to just live in terror and discomfort for years
Yeah.
at a time, because that's what growth means.
Mm-hmm. Or that like you're gonna eventually like spontaneously find compersion in this.
Right.
Like that just might not happen. And I think while we were processing through this a little bit before we started recording, I was talking about how for me personally, this doesn't mean for everybody, but like I really enjoy hearing my partner's yes and no's now more so than I enjoy hearing, let me try this or let me sit with this and see how I feel. I mean, that's good too. However, I think it's so important to be able to say like, in this season of my life right now, this is what I can wiggle with. This is what I cannot wiggle with.
Mhm.
Right. Because I don't want you to assume that there's going to be this spontaneous goodness on the other side of sitting through this white knuckling, or that you haven't told me how you really feel. And now we have all of these weeds we have to pull out of your resentment garden. I'd much rather you tell me that your ability to be expansive is actually kind of small.
Yep.
And that I can rest in your no, so that I actually can trust your guest and your guests in the future. I think that's pretty important.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't surprise. I hear in there, my brain's like, don't surprise me, right? Where you're like, I think I'd like to go do this thing. And they're like, yeah, that's no problem. No problem. And then you come home and it was like a huge problem. You're like, well,
Yeah.
wait a minute. I
Yeah.
thought, versus, hey, I want to support you in that. I think it's going to be really hard for me.
Mm-hmm,
And yet
mm-hmm.
I still, right. So being honest about what that's
Yeah.
going on for you, or I
Mm-hmm,
don't think I could handle that right now. And
mm-hmm,
that's not to say don't go, but
mm-hmm.
if you go,
This
no,
is where I'm
I'm
at.
right. Versus telling somebody, oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. And then hoping somehow between the time they left and the time they come home, you figured out how to be fine. That's a tall order.
That's a very tall order. It's a very tall order.
If you're just gone long enough, I'll figure this out. So stay away a few more months, because I'm still working
It's
on
like
it.
the opposite of what happens to our nervous systems for the most part. Now there are exceptions to the rule. There are some people who will sit in it and then after a while it's okay. Like I know like I would sometimes get really nervous when my partner would leave for like a long period of time, like, oh, we've been together for so long. What am I gonna do for this week? That feeling would last like 5 hours. And then I'd be like, oh, I can starfish in the bed and the whole room is mine. And I don't have to pick up after my clothes. It sounds great, But, if that happens like literally hours afterwards, but if it had not been that. And it was like 2 to 3 times that partner had left. And I was literally like, I'm still sad 2 days later. Like, I'm going to listen to my nervous system. I'm going to listen to the fact that like, this isn't working for me in this manner. We have to reconfigure this or talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what can we do?
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe just to put a big old bow on this, I just wanted to say too, because they worried that they were overreacting. And I think I don't know. That's a hard one for me. I think we feel what we feel, and what do we do with that is different, right? But to say that you just shouldn't be feeling something, I think is so. I don't think you're overreacting. I think you're feeling exactly what you're feeling and trying to figure out what to do with it. And it sounds like for a year you've been sitting on it, trying to figure out, how do I get to be okay with this? And it hasn't just spontaneously happened for you. And so I don't know. I don't think when we feel something, I don't think we're overreacting. I think the overreacting comes in what we do with that.
Yes.
So to worry that your feelings aren't valid, I would say is where I would say there's no overreacting in what we feel.
Absolutely. And our feelings are all going to be very different. So even if you did have people to talk to you about this, they would probably all tell you just a little something different. So
just like we did.
True.
Well, thank you for sending in this question and for sharing a little bit of what you're going through, because we talked about this for quite a while before we hit record, because both felt this one in a big way. So just thank you for sending it in.
And you're not alone. I promise you there are other people who have this exact same question and are trying to muddle through what this looks like, whether that's like, I just haven't found a person yet, or whether they've decided to be mono-poly. Like, this is such a great question. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Yeah. And for the inquiry about what does breaking up mean? And I think we learned a little bit about each other in that one as well.
Labels. I like it. I hadn't thought of it that way. It's a great way to look at it.
Well, thank you, Meshai, for coming on once again, crushing it together and sharing some opinions with the world.
Yeah. That's what we're doing.
And we'll be back.
We're tackling 2025 like from the beginning. So
from starting fresh. Well, for anybody who wants to send in a question, you can do that. You can send them in on our contact page of our website at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. You can send us an email or a voicemail. I'll read your emails in my own interpretation, and we'll play your voicemails if you would like. And I will say too, next month, our vision is to have a couple of, actually one doctor and so Evelyn Dacker, who is a physician and works a lot with sexual health and STIs up in the Portland area, and also another friend of the show, Courtney Brame, who is the founder of Something Positive for Positive People, which is an organization that's fighting stigma against STIs and herpes, so herpes diagnoses. So we've got 2 amazing people coming on to join us next month to answer questions about sexual health. So if you have questions for us about sexual health, stigma, all of the things, please send them in. We would love to answer them. And if we don't make it happen in February, we'll make it happen in March. But it's coming up in the next month or 2 that we're gonna pull the
Sounds
squad
like
together.
Such a great conversation and all the questions. I'm really excited about this one. This is going to be cool.
I'm looking forward to it as well. I've talked to both these amazing people a few times, and just always wonderful to have them on. So I'm excited for it. So please send us your questions, and we'll do our best as we always do. If you have any feedback for what we shared today, please send it our way, and we'll take it into consideration. All right, Meshai, have a wonderful rest of your January, and we'll see you in February.
My boss. Okay, I'll see you then. Bye.